What happens when a national icon becomes the center of the most explosive murder case in modern American history? What happens when every clue, every allegation, every emotion is broadcast to millions in real time? And what happens when a courtroom transforms into a global stage and the entire world picks a side before the verdict is even spoken? Tonight, we revisit a story that didn't just dominate headlines, it reshaped them. A case that changed how America understands fame, justice, media, race, and truth. This is the story of O.J. Simpson and the murders that became known as the trial of the century. Imagine a moment when nearly every household in America had their television turned on at the same time. When strangers stopped each other on the street to ask, "Did you hear what happened?" When office buildings, schools, and restaurants paused daily routines just to follow the next twist. That level of national obsession wasn't created overnight. It was the product of a story involving fame, love, conflict, heartbreak, and a sudden tragedy that unfolded in a way almost made for television. But before the world would see helicopter footage, courtroom theatrics, and endless analysis, there were two lives at the center of everything. And a third, a man whose fame magnified every detail. Los Angeles in the mid-90s was a city of contrasts. A place of sunshine and luxury, yet also lingering with tension after years of public controversies, celebrity scandals, and the aftermath of the Rodney King trial. The media landscape was evolving quickly. 24-hour news cycles were becoming the norm. In that environment, a case involving a beloved celebrity wasn't just a news story. It was fuel for a media explosion unlike anything the country had seen before. To understand the scale of this case, you must first understand the scale of O.J. Simpson's celebrity. In 1994, Orenthal James O.J. Simpson wasn't just famous. He was one of the most universally recognized figures in America. A Hall of Fame NFL running back, a record-breaking athlete known for speed, grace, and charisma, a movie and TV personality, the face of major brands, including one of the most iconic advertising campaigns of the era. Simpson wasn't just admired, he was trusted. He was seen as friendly, approachable, and almost larger than life. A success story that millions felt connected to. But fame is complicated, and behind closed doors, Simpson's life had layers the public rarely saw. Nicole Brown Simpson met O.J. when she was young, vibrant, and working in Los Angeles. Their relationship was passionate, high-profile, and often under intense pressure. Friends described Nicole as warm, caring, and devoted to her family. She built a circle of close relationships, and after her marriage to Simpson ended, she focused on creating a peaceful life for herself and her children. But Nicole's life had also included conflicts and stress. She had reached out for help at various times, trying to navigate the difficulties of her past relationship with O.J. Simpson. By 1994, Nicole was working toward independence, hosting family gatherings, maintaining friendships, and creating a new normal. She could not have known that her name would soon be spoken in every household across America. Ronald Goldman was 25 years old, energetic, friendly, and full of plans for his future. He worked as a waiter in Brentwood, pursued modeling, and studied martial arts. Friends described him as responsible, optimistic, and always ready to help someone in need. One of those small acts of kindness, returning a pair of forgotten glasses, would place him at the center of a case he never imagined he'd be part of. He had no idea that on that night, he was walking toward a moment that would change history. By early June 1994, the ingredients for a national firestorm were quietly in place. A beloved athlete with global fame, a former spouse trying to rebuild her life, a young man whose routine evening took an unexpected turn, a city still sensitive to high-profile controversies, and a media landscape hungry for dramatic stories. But nothing, not the public, not the police, not the reporters, could have predicted how the next days would unfold. June 12th began like any ordinary summer day in Los Angeles. The air was warm, the streets calm, and the neighborhoods filled with the usual weekend quiet. No one knew that within hours, a discovery would ignite one of the most explosive investigations in American history. No one knew that the names Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman would become forever linked to a case still studied decades later. And no one knew that O.J. Simpson, a man celebrated by millions, was about to become the center of the most watched criminal trial the world had ever seen. What happened next would unfold in a timeline so shocking, so fast-moving, and so heavily televised that it became impossible to look away. Now, we step into the night when everything changed.
Sunday, June 12, 1994. Brentwood, a quiet, polished corner of Los Angeles, woke up to sunshine, warm air, and calm summer energy. No one could imagine that by the next morning, this same neighborhood would become the center of the most scrutinized crime in modern American history. On that Sunday, life moved forward in Brentwood as usual. Families walked dogs, neighbors mowed lawns, joggers traced familiar routes under bright blue skies. Nicole Brown Simpson began her day with ordinary plans, time with her children, preparation for the week ahead, and later, dinner with her family. At the same time, across Los Angeles, Ron Goldman was going about his own routine. He worked his shift at Mezzaluna Trattoria, a restaurant where Nicole often dined. Nothing about the daylight hours hinted at the storm that would soon break. Later that evening, Nicole and her family arrived at Mezzaluna for dinner. It was a familiar place, one she had visited many times. Ron was working there that night, like countless other evenings. The interactions were normal. The energy was relaxed. It was the kind of calm, everyday routine that rarely leaves a memory. When Nicole and her family finished dinner and left the restaurant, she didn't realize she had accidentally left behind a pair of glasses belonging to her mother. This small oversight, something that could happen to anyone, would unknowingly draw Ron Goldman into the final hours before the world changed. Sometime later, Ron Goldman agreed to return the glasses to Nicole's condominium on Bundy Drive. For him, it was nothing more than helping a customer he knew. A brief stop, a short drive, a quick handoff. Nothing about this errand suggested danger. Nothing suggested he was stepping into the center of one of the most infamous crime scenes in American history. But as the night settled over Brentwood, another story was unfolding in silence. After 10 p.m., the peaceful streets of Brentwood grew still. Porch lights glowed softly. A few late walkers moved through the neighborhood. A calm, uneventful night. But sometime in that window, the ordinary turned into the unimaginable. Neighbors later recalled hearing a dog barking persistently. Not a casual bark, but something more urgent. Something that seemed unusual for the neighborhood's quiet nights. Meanwhile, the streets remained still. No alarms, no signs of chaos, just the faint sound of a distressed animal. Around midnight, a neighbor walking near the condominium noticed a dog wandering alone. The dog was familiar, Nicole's Akita, but its behavior was not. It was distressed, restless, as if desperately trying to draw attention to something. The neighbor did not yet know why. The Akita was eventually taken in temporarily by another neighbor, but it continued to behave in a way that suggested it wanted to lead someone somewhere. And that's exactly what it would soon do. Around the early hours of June 13th, the Akitas determined pulling led neighbors back toward Nicole's home. As they approached, they saw details that immediately raised concern. Something was terribly wrong. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, they contacted the police. Patrol officers arrived shortly after. At first, they saw only a quiet building and a seemingly ordinary entrance. But what they would soon find would silence a city. As officers investigated the area surrounding the condominium, they observed signs that confirmed this was no ordinary call. Their flashlights traced the walkway, the gate, the steps, each detail painting a clearer picture that something devastating had occurred. The officers quickly secured the scene. Radio calls went out. Detectives were notified. The peaceful calm of Brentwood was shattered. What the officers found in those early morning hours would ignite a chain reaction that spread from Los Angeles to every corner of the country and eventually across the world. This was no isolated tragedy. It was the beginning of a story involving a famous athlete, 2 innocent lives, a media frenzy, and a legal battle that would dominate the 1990s. Police immediately began connecting timelines, identifying individuals, and retracing the final steps of everyone involved. But one fact stood out immediately. Nicole Brown Simpson had once been married to one of the most famous men in America, and that connection alone intensified everything that followed. As sunrise approached on June 13th, detectives began piecing together the final hours before the discovery. The timeline, the relationships, the property details, the people present and absent. Each clue pushed investigators down a path that would soon lead them to one name, a name the entire country already knew. Now, the investigation begins.
In the early hours of June 13th, 1994, Brentwood was no longer just a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood. It had become the epicenter of a case that would soon dominate every television, every newspaper, every conversation. When detectives arrived just after midnight, they immediately recognized the gravity of what they were looking at. It wasn't confusion or uncertainty. It was the unmistakable sense that this scene would spark an investigation unlike any they had handled before. It didn't take long for them to identify the victims: Nicole Brown Simpson, Ronald Goldman. Two lives ended within steps of Nicole's front door. Detectives quickly began documenting the scene, photographing angles, marking details, scanning the area for anything that could help them understand what had happened. But almost immediately, their attention turned to someone closely connected to Nicole's life. Given Nicole's past relationship with O.J. Simpson, detectives listed him as someone they needed to speak with, not as a suspect, but as someone who might shed light on Nicole's recent activities and any relevant context. So, as dawn approached, they drove to Simpson's Rockingham estate in Brentwood, just minutes away. But what they found there only deepened the questions. When officers arrived at the gates of the property, several observations stood out immediately. The house was dark, completely still. No one responded to the intercom. The front driveway gate appeared quiet, undisturbed. A white Ford Bronco, a vehicle many would soon become familiar with, was parked at an unusual angle along the curb. And on the exterior of the vehicle, officers noted faint markings that prompted further curiosity. These were not definitive clues, but enough to raise eyebrows. Officers attempted to reach Simpson directly. He wasn't at home. No one appeared to be inside. Eventually, after multiple attempts, they learned Simpson was in Chicago, having taken a late-night flight out of Los Angeles. Detectives contacted Simpson by phone in Chicago. They informed him of the tragedy. They asked him to return to Los Angeles as soon as possible. Simpson agreed. Within hours, he was on a flight headed back home, and by mid-morning, he walked into Parker Center, the LAPD headquarters, to speak voluntarily with detectives. Simpson's arrival at the police station was closely watched. Detectives noted everything: his tone, his movements, the details of his recollection. He spoke about his relationship with Nicole. He spoke about his evening prior to leaving for Chicago. He spoke about how shocked he was to learn what had happened. His demeanor became part of the early investigative discussions, not as proof, but as context. By the time he left the station, detectives were already sorting through evidence from multiple locations. As the sun climbed higher on June 13th, teams of detectives, forensic specialists, and crime scene analysts were working in coordination. They collected items from Nicole's home. They examined the Bronco at Rockingham. They documented every detail that could matter in the days ahead. They gathered information from neighbors, witnesses, and early emergency responders. Phone records were pulled. Timeline logs were reviewed. Travel schedules were confirmed. Statements began forming the skeleton of the case. Laboratory technicians started analyzing collected samples, clothing traces, and material evidence. Every fragment mattered. One particular piece of evidence quickly became a central focus: a glove found at Simpson's property. It was discovered near a side path leading into the Rockingham estate. Its location, condition, and potential connection immediately set off waves of conversation within the investigative team, because it appeared to resemble another glove found at Nicole's home. If the connection was accurate, investigators believed they were looking at a clue that could tie two locations together. Detectives knew it had to be handled with the utmost care. It would later become one of the most debated pieces of evidence in the entire trial, a moment replayed in documentaries, news specials, and courtroom retrospectives for decades. Simultaneously, detectives interviewed anyone with knowledge of the events that night. Neighbors recalled the persistent barking of Nicole's dog, a detail that would help narrow the time frame of the incident. Restaurant staff confirmed seeing Nicole and her family earlier that evening. Others confirmed Ron's decision to return the forgotten glasses. Each interview refined a timeline. When Nicole was last seen, when Ron left the restaurant, when the neighborhood grew strangely quiet, and when the first calls to the police were made. This timeline became the backbone of the case. While investigators worked through the night and into the next day, the media began catching wind of the developing story. A tragedy involving Nicole Brown Simpson, a young man named Ron Goldman, and a former NFL superstar connected to the case. It took only hours for reporters to swarm the Brentwood streets. Cameras lined the sidewalks. Helicopters circled overhead. This was no longer just an LAPD investigation. It was becoming a national spectacle. The pressure mounted. Every movement by detectives was magnified. Every rumor spread like wildfire. As the first 24 hours passed, evidence began forming a clearer picture for detectives. Details from the scene, details from Rockingham, statements from Simpson, statements from neighbors, the presence of the Bronco, the glove found near the property. These were puzzle pieces, and as investigators placed them together, a narrative began emerging. A narrative that pointed toward one person. Within days, the case would take a dramatic turn, leading to one of the most unforgettable police events ever broadcast live on television. The evidence, the interviews, the timelines, all of it was leading detectives down a path that would soon place one of America's most famous athletes at the center of a homicide investigation. And the world, watching every second, was about to witness history.
By June 17, 1994, 5 days after the murders shook Brentwood, Los Angeles prosecutors made a decision that would ignite a cultural firestorm. They officially filed 2 counts of murder against Orenthal James, O.J. Simpson, one of America's most celebrated athletes, a man adored by millions, now accused of the unthinkable. But if the filing of charges was shocking, what happened next stunned the entire nation. Simpson, through his powerful legal team, insisted he was innocent. He promised to cooperate fully. He agreed to surrender at 11 a.m. that Friday. But when that moment came, O.J. Simpson was nowhere to be found. His attorneys stepped before cameras, visibly shaken, visibly confused, announcing that their client had vanished. In an era before smartphones, before social media, a missing celebrity of this magnitude was unprecedented. Police were alerted. The city braced. And then, less than 2 hours later, the first whispers began. A white Ford Bronco, a familiar vehicle to anyone who followed Simpson's life, was spotted on a Southern California freeway. But this wasn't just any Bronco. It was being driven by Al Cowlings, O.J.'s longtime friend. And in the passenger seat was Simpson himself. Authorities learned quickly that Simpson had a cell phone, rare for the time, and was speaking with police negotiators. The tension in those brief transmissions revealed a man under immense emotional pressure, and a friend desperately trying to keep the situation from spiraling. Within minutes, a convoy of police cruisers lined up behind the Bronco. Helicopters circled above. Newsrooms across the country cut into live programming. Basketball playoffs, baseball games, even the NBA Finals, all interrupted for what became one of the most watched live events in American history. The pursuit wasn't fast. It wasn't chaotic. It crept along the freeway at a slow, steady pace, almost eerily calm. But the tension? Absolutely electric. Crowds formed spontaneously along overpasses. Some held signs of support for Simpson, "Go O.J.," while others stood in disbelief at what they were witnessing. People waved. Some cheered. Some cried. It was as if the entire country was no longer watching a criminal case, but a national drama unfolding in real time. What was happening inside the Bronco remained a mystery to the public, but police communications later revealed a tense situation. O.J. Simpson, once a symbol of strength and confidence, now appeared distraught. Negotiators urged caution. Officers were ordered to stand down and avoid escalating the situation. The priority was bringing Simpson in safely. The freeway rolled beneath the Bronco's tires as afternoon light slowly faded, the world watching every inch of its journey. As evening arrived, the Bronco finally approached Simpson's Rockingham estate, the same home detectives had visited earlier in the investigation. Crowds outside swelled. Media vans surrounded the street. Officers formed a perimeter. After hours of tension, O.J. Simpson stepped out of the vehicle. A nation exhaled. He surrendered peacefully and was taken into custody. The chase was over. The Bronco pursuit didn't just mark a turning point in the case. It marked a turning point in American culture. For some, it was a tragedy unfolding in real time. For others, it felt like watching a beloved figure fall from grace. For millions, it was the moment they chose a side. And that divide, racial, cultural, social, would only become deeper when the trial began. With Simpson now in custody, investigators turned to the question that has driven homicide investigations for centuries: motive. Was there anger, jealousy, resentment lingering from a broken marriage? Were past conflicts between Simpson and Nicole signs of something darker beneath the surface? Prosecutors believe that emotional volatility and unresolved tensions played a role. They suggested that the separation, the new relationships, and the shifting dynamics in Nicole's life may have created a storm of emotion. But the defense countered sharply. They argued there was no clear motive, that Simpson had moved on with his life, that prosecutors were reaching, that the entire motive theory was based on assumptions, not facts. What emerged was a clash of interpretations, each side claiming the moral high ground. After the arrest, the story no longer belonged solely to detectives, lawyers, or journalists. It belonged to the world. Every hint of evidence, every legal decision, every televised moment of Simpson stepping into a courtroom became headline news. The Bronco chase didn't just end with a surrender. It launched the case into unprecedented territory. What followed would become the most dissected, televised, and emotionally charged trial in modern American history. And the battle for truth had only just begun.
January 1995. As winter settled over Los Angeles, the nation braced for a legal battle unlike anything it had ever seen. A trial so massive, so polarizing, that it would soon eclipse sports, politics, and entertainment. A trial that would become a daily obsession. The world had already lived through the chase, the headlines, the theories, but now it was time for the courtroom. And what unfolded next wasn't just a trial. It was a spectacle, a story told in real time to millions. From the first day of proceedings, the O.J. Simpson trial didn't feel like a legal case. It felt like a live broadcast event. The cameras were everywhere, capturing every movement. Jurors entered under intense secrecy. Attorneys became household names. Witnesses turned into unexpected cultural figures. Every morning began with an eruption of media vans outside the courthouse. Reporters from across the globe crowded the steps. Satellite dishes lined the sidewalks like metal trees. People didn't just watch the trial, they followed it. Every objection, every ruling, every moment of tension. It was television, but it was real. On one side stood the prosecution, Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, meticulous, sharp, determined. On the other side, the defense, famously known as the Dream Team. A lineup of some of the most formidable attorneys in the country. Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, F., Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, and Robert Kardashian. The courtroom felt like two titans clashing, strategy versus counter-strategy, personality versus personality. The prosecution aimed to present a clear narrative. The defense aimed to dismantle it piece by piece. With stakes this high, nothing was ordinary. The prosecution presented physical clues they believed tied Simpson to the crime. They walked the jury through timelines, items found at the scene, early witness statements, and laboratory findings. They framed the case around connections, points that, when arranged together, painted a picture they believed was undeniable. But the defense responded with a different strategy. They questioned procedures. They examined how items were collected. They probed every step investigators took, looking for gaps, mistakes, or inconsistencies. They argued that evidence could be mishandled, contaminated, misinterpreted, and most of all, they suggested that bias may have influenced how the investigation unfolded. It wasn't just a legal debate, it was a philosophical one. Can the truth be trusted if the process behind it is questioned? Witnesses came and went. Neighbors, friends, experts, officers. Each added a piece to the mosaic. Some spoke calmly. Others faced intense cross-examination. The courtroom would fall completely silent as jurors leaned in, trying to discern truth from interpretation. The trial wasn't just about facts. It was about persuasion, emotion, and perception. But among all the dramatic moments, one stands above the rest. The glove demonstration. In a move that would redefine the trial, the prosecution asked Simpson to try on a pair of gloves connected to the evidence. As cameras zoomed in, the courtroom watched breathlessly. Simpson struggled with the gloves. His fingers stiff, his hands strained. They appeared too tight, too small. The moment was visually powerful and instantly unforgettable. And then came the line that would echo through history. "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." With that single phrase, the momentum of the case shifted, not legally, but in the court of public opinion. October 3rd, 1995, after 9 months of testimony, arguments, and national tension, the jury had reached a decision. Deliberations lasted less than 4 hours, stunningly short for such a complex case. The courtroom was packed. Cameras were rolling. Across the world, workplaces paused. Schools paused. Even stock markets briefly slowed. At exactly 10 a.m., the clerk read the verdict. O.J. Simpson was found not guilty on all criminal charges. The aftermath was instant and explosive. In the courtroom, some people celebrated. Others broke down. Some stood frozen, unable to process what they had just heard. Outside the courthouse, reactions ranged from jubilation to fury. The verdict deepened national divides, sparking debates about justice, race, class, celebrity, and the criminal justice system itself. The trial had ended, but the controversy was only beginning. 2 years later, in 1997, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman pursued a civil lawsuit, a separate legal route that focused on accountability. In civil court, the standard of proof was different. Instead of beyond a reasonable doubt, jurors needed only to decide based on a preponderance of the evidence. The case unfolded with less media chaos, but the emotions, the testimonies, and the weight of the loss remained heavy. At the end of the proceedings, the civil jury found O.J. Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. He was ordered to pay substantial monetary damages. Though it did not carry criminal punishment, the civil verdict marked a significant chapter in the long, complex story, one that continues to be debated, studied, and revisited decades later. The criminal verdict, the civil judgment, the public reaction, all of it combined to create a legal saga that changed how the world looks at courtroom cases. It reshaped media coverage. It influenced how trials are televised. It refueled conversations about fairness, bias, celebrity, and the power of narrative. The O.J. Simpson case didn't simply end. It became a piece of American history. Because long after the verdicts were read, the questions continue. And the debate over what truly happened remains one of the most enduring mysteries in modern culture.
Long after the verdicts were read, long after the cameras were packed away and the court doors closed, the story of O.J. Simpson refused to fade. Instead, it evolved. It resurfaced, and it continued to haunt the world's imagination. Most trials end at the verdict, but this one, the so-called trial of the century, began a second life the moment the jury stepped out of the courtroom. In the years that followed, documentaries emerged, each promising new angles and unseen insights. Television networks produced multi-part series, digging into interviews, testimony, and public reaction. Books were written by attorneys, investigators, journalists, and even people who had simply witnessed the cultural shockwave. The trial became a blueprint, a case study for law students, a reference for media critics, and a touchstone for debates about justice in America. Every detail was re-examined. Every strategy was reinterpreted. Every moment was scrutinized all over again. Some viewers who were too young to understand the case in 1995 discovered it later through archived footage. Others learned about it from dramatizations that rekindled the fascination. And with each new retelling, the conversation returned. For many, the case became more than a criminal trial. It became a mirror reflecting the country's divisions. People didn't simply have opinions about the evidence. They had beliefs shaped by their own experiences, communities, and histories. Some argued the verdict represented a failure of justice. Others saw it as a correction to years of distrust between law enforcement and marginalized groups. The split was deep, emotional, and long-lasting. And as time passed, those differing perspectives remained, a reminder of how powerful and polarizing the case had become. Before this case, televised trials were rare. After it, they became a phenomenon. News channels realized viewers were willing to watch legal proceedings for hours. Talk shows spent entire episodes debating new developments. Courtroom analysts became celebrities in their own right. The case accelerated a media transformation from nightly news reports to 24-hour coverage. It wasn't just a trial. It was the arrival of a new era of reality-based storytelling. A moment when the justice system and entertainment merged on live television. Life after the criminal and civil trials did not return to normal for O.J. Simpson. The civil verdict left him responsible for significant financial damages. Public appearances brought mixed reactions, some supportive, others hostile. His personal life remained heavily covered, with every move attracting attention. In later years, Simpson faced new legal challenges unrelated to the 1994 case. These incidents added another layer to an already complicated public image. His journey became part of a larger conversation, one that combined celebrity, consequences, and the difficulty of escaping public scrutiny. With time, the names and faces at the center of the trial became part of history, studied, analyzed, and debated. Younger audiences, born years after the trial, discovered the case through digital archives, streaming platforms, and documentaries. They watched old footage as if it were happening live. The same questions rose every time. What really happened? Why did the trial unfold the way it did? And what does it say about the justice system today? It's rare for a case to remain relevant across decades. But the O.J. Simpson case does, because it sits at the crossroads of crime, fame, race, media, and national identity. And crossroads never stop generating discussion. Even today, years after the events, questions linger. Some wonder whether the investigation should have been handled differently. Others discuss the strategy of the legal teams or the effect of televised trials on jury perception. And still others ask whether such a case could even happen the same way in the modern era, with social media, instant communication, and a world more connected than ever. But perhaps the most haunting question of all is the simplest. Why does this story continue to captivate us? Maybe it's the mystery. Maybe it's the characters. Maybe it's the contradictions. Or maybe it's because this case wasn't just about evidence. It was about America. The O.J. Simpson case was never just a courtroom drama. It was a cultural earthquake, a collision of fame, tragedy, media frenzy, and public consciousness. It shaped how we view justice. It reshaped how we consume news, and it left behind lessons that continue to echo through documentaries, classrooms, and living rooms. Decades later, it still stands as one of the most debated legal sagas in modern history, a story whose impact reaches far beyond its verdicts. There are cases that end when the judge bangs the gavel. This was not one of them. If you found this case compelling and want to follow more real investigations, courtroom moments, and true crime breakdowns, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Your likes, comments, and turning on the notification bell help you stay updated whenever we release a new story. Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear your perspective.